Welcome to the whole Peace Month of September. And I promised a month full of interviews with very interesting and important people I know. And the first one of this whole series, and you get it every week, a couple of speakers, is Dr. Scilla Elworthy. And I'm thrilled to have you here, Scilla. Welcome.
Nyanka, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
We collaborated for a couple of years now, but for the people who don't know you yet, I will just say, Dr. Scilla Elworthy is the founder of the Oxford Research Group. She did amazing work in the field of nuclear disarmament. She was an advisor for the founding of the Elder Group with Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu, Richard Branson. And she's an author and she's a source of inspiration for me. I just go back to her work of Pioneer the Possible so often. And I really started to collaborate with you, Scilla, in the business plan for peace work and your latest awesome work. It's called The Mighty Heart. And we will cover that all. But I really want to dive straight into the material of the source of inspiration. And you shared with a group where I met you, I can't even remember where, that your seed of a peace builder was really seeded in at a very young age. Can you share where this whole thing started?
Oh, thank you, Nyanka. Well, I'm one of the lucky ones because I really had no choice. When I was, I think, 11, and my three big brothers gave me a shotgun and taught me how to fire it. And I thought it was very clever. And I went out secretly into the woods by myself and I did something taboo. I pointed the gun upwards into a tree where there was a nest and pulled the trigger. And down on my head came pieces of eggshell, pieces of egg yolk, pieces of baby chick, and the sky blue feathers of the mother bird. And I was so shocked by the violence of which I was capable that I took the gun and put it away and never touched it again. And I think it was this realization of the terrible destructive effect of firearms that made me want to do my very best to stop people killing each other.
Yes. And I also remember you shared that you worked with the Second World War survivors of the camps. How did it influence you?
Oh, well, this was when I was, I think I was 13, 2 years later, and I was watching a grainy old black and white TV in my parents' living room, and I I saw the Russian, well then Soviet tanks pounding their way into Budapest in Hungary and killing people about my age. And I was so shocked that I rushed upstairs and started packing my suitcase. And my mother came up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm going to Budapest." I had no idea where Budapest was. And she said, "What for?" And I said, "Well, there's something so horrible happening there. I have to go now." And she said, "Don't be so silly." And I burst into tears. And she got it. Bless her, she got it. She said, "Okay, I understand it's really important to you, but you're much too young to be useful to anybody. And if you'll just unpack your suitcase, I will see to it that you get trained." And she did. She sent me off aged 16 to work in a holiday home for concentration camp survivors. And I spent the summer peeling potatoes and listening to the experiences of people who'd been in Auschwitz. And this, again, cemented in my mind that I had to put myself in service of that not happening again.
Yeah, I think it's really great that your mother got you. I think we have very much a lot of youth who's willing to step up, only if they got the right education. And in the world peace summit we do now, it's the theme, Building Bridges, Connecting Worlds. And we will bring youth, men and women together. And this is all around what we do in the 4-week Peace Month of September, what we'll do on a live day on International Peace Day on September 21st, and you will be there with us. But also on the 4-month training, it's all the collaboration between youth, men and women. So I think it's important to have the right people around you and make peace happening, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely vital, Nyanka, and what you're organizing is going to be really useful to people all over the world to see how activists and peace builders can work with people who want to help them and support them in the very, very dangerous work that some of them do. And we can certainly hear about some of those extraordinary, courageous peace builders as we go along.
For sure, for sure. What I know from you, and what you see in all the books, is the importance of inner work, your own inner works. You can't really move on if you haven't really organized your own inner work. So when did you discover that importance?
Well, again, it was a gift, but a gift that lay in a very serious illness. After my daughter was born, when I was 30, I caught a terrible disease in Southern Africa called encephalitis, and it put me in a coma for 2 weeks, and then 6 years of excruciating headaches. But there was one gift in this, in that there was one phrase that went round and round in my soggy brain, which was, who am I? Who am I? What am I here for? And I couldn't answer that question because in those days, in the 70s, not many people were on that kind of path. But I found my way to people who could really help me to discover the answer to who am I, at least to begin to do that. And it's become a life practice of meditation, of self-reflection on a daily basis, to the extent that I am convinced that this inner work is essential to enable us to do really effective prevention of armed conflict.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And you worked with groups, and I've been participating in them. I've seen the shifts everywhere, and it has been a huge gift to me as well, knowing where you've gone through, so I could recover myself too. It's great source of inspiration. And if we look at your latest work of the Mighty Heart, transforming conflicts, how do you deal with conflict yourself?
Good question. I'm not always very good at it, but I do learn by my mistakes, I hope. There's various aspects to it, but the key thing, I think, in all this, in preventing conflict from escalating, if we start there, is learning to listen. Now, we all think we're good at listening, but most of us are not. And so we practice, as I've taught the top echelons of big international companies who think they're very good at listening, and tell me, well, we listen all the time to our staff, so of course we know how to do it. And I put them through a very elemental exercise to check how good their listening is, and they are shocked to find out how much progress they need to make. And then I offer them the skills of real listening. And the secret of it, as you know only too well, Nyanka, is that if I can really deeply open not just my ears, but my heart to what's going on for you, to the extent that I could repeat back to you what you might have just said. And then if we're in a disagreement, you would do the same with me. Listen to my point of view of the disagreement and repeat back to me what I had said. We would then move from here, which says, I'm right and you're wrong, to the heart that says, oh my goodness, is that how she feels? And when we get to that point, we're much more able to build a bridge over which we can meet if we are in a dispute. So it's really the basis of all good communication, is to learn to listen so intently that we can remember what the other person has really said, and not just what they said, but how they felt in saying that.
The feeling around it is very important, and you did this listening and these exercises also with the top of the military, isn't it? How was that received? That's not a common thing, and particularly for a woman in that area.
You're quite right. When I started this program of trying to get nuclear weapons policymakers from all the 5 nuclear weapons nations to meet each other, which they didn't want to do. They didn't know each other. They'd never met each other. So eventually, after many mistakes that we made, we managed to get them to come to off-the-record meeting in a manor house outside Oxford in England. And we had no press, no communique, even no name tags. And eventually, with our encouragement, these very senior people, like the head of warhead design from Los Alamos, meeting his counterpart from the UK, didn't know each other, and enabling them to actually sit down, eventually take their jackets off and listen to each other. It was quite dramatic and quite testing how long it took.
And what did you consider as mistakes in bringing them together?
Well, first of all, we thought that if we just wrote to them, they would be glad to meet an opposite number. But what we met was a blank wall of silence. They thought they were very suspicious. They didn't know what we were, who we were, what our agenda was. So that's when I did my doctorate, because I realized I needed to really understand their world. And so I interviewed 13 nuclear weapon policymakers for my doctorate and really listened to them. And then I drew mind maps of what they had told me, how they thought, and said to them afterwards, would you like to see the mind maps that I made? And they said yes. And then we sat down and talked for another 2 hours. And that way they learned to trust me. And that was how we built this atmosphere of trust that enabled the British to come with us at very, very senior military levels on visits to China, delegations to China, and Chinese delegations to come back to the UK. And we included French and American and eventually Russian as well in these discussions. And that was what the nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize were for, doing that work.
Important work, and it's still important. It's not solved yet, isn't it?
No, really not solved.
And if we go back to this inner work and dealing with inner critics, do you think those people in the military were influenced by their inner critics?
Oh, I think it's well known now that people at the very top of their professions suffer from what is called imposter syndrome. In other words, they think that they're going to be found out for not knowing as much as they are expected to know. So they have this underlying feeling of nervousness. Oh, if they only knew I'm not really who I'm cracked up to be. And so this is why we help everybody who joins the Mighty Heart course to not only address their inner critic in a very amusing way, but also to get into a relationship with their inner critic, whereby that critic can eventually become their ally, their friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that because I had a very serious inner critic all my life.
Oh, tell me. I thought I was the only one. Tell me what happened to you.
You know, when I ask a live audience in the days when one could, a big live audience, is there anyone in this room who does not have an inner critic? Nobody raises their hand. It's totally prevalent, so you're not alone. This way of learning to meet the inner critic, because most of the time what we do with our critical voices is tell them to shut up, and we push them away. And the more we push them away, the louder their voices get, as we know. So I found the only way to do it was, if they woke me up at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, was to say, okay, after I'd tossed and turned for half an hour, I have to get up, do something about this, make a cup of tea. And then I would set out 2 cushions, and I would sit on the one cushion and put my inner critic, metaphorically, on the other one. And I would say, why did you wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, tormenting me with these criticisms? And then I would get up and go and sit on the other cushion and answer in the voice of that critic. It's extraordinary how it happens. And that critic would say, well, you haven't prepared what you're going to say tomorrow. You'll make an idiot of yourself. You don't know what you're talking about. So I'd come back to my cushion and I would say, that is not very helpful, because the critic is a bully and you have to be tough with it. Tell me what you really want me to know. And then I'd go back to the critic's cushion, and then it is a he in my question. So it's a dragon, a male dragon. And I would get a slightly more informative answer. But if I pursued with this dialogue, eventually, after many sessions, I made a good friend of this critic, because he, under his left claw, he had a diamond, metaphorically, a diamond of knowledge, which is what I needed to know. And I knew he had it, and I had to get close enough to get him to lift his claw and give me access to that diamond, which was an absolute home truth about myself, which was profoundly helpful.
I recognize that a lot. And I discovered many inner critics in all variations. And for me, it's very helpful to befriend them instead of push them away. And I think that's in a way of building bridges as well, building bridges internally to your inner critic and see what comes out.
Exactly. You Nyanka, you're a mistress of doing this. You really know what you're doing with this kind of work.
Yeah, I think it's important, because if we know ourselves and we are able to connect with our inner critics, we can connect with our outer critics as well. And then we are connecting with the world. So that's why we, with the team, are so eager to have the theme of this year around International Peace Day, building bridges, connecting worlds. So if we go to that theme, can you share with us how building bridges, connecting worlds is showing up in your work at the moment?
Well, it's as I say, it's a bumpy road to get there, but where it is now is that we're able to show people through the Mighty Heart course how they can use the tools, the 10 modules, the 10 tools that we take them through and teach, to be able to connect with people they're frightened of, be able to take a stand on an issue that they really care about without antagonizing the other person. We enable them to find ways that they can use to open a dialogue with people they profoundly disagree with. And this is also the case when people need a little bit of encouragement and training to come into real relationship with those who might have been their, in quotes, enemies, with people with whom they have a fundamental disagreement. And this also involves building the mighty heart through learning the propensities of the heart in terms of energy communication. The Heart Math Institute in the United States has done a lot of experiments measuring the megahertz of the heart energy and how you and I, are able to send out the energy of the heart to someone we care about, even if they're some distance away, and their heart rate is then measured and their heart synchronizes with ours. In other words, that kind, loving feeling communicates in a measurable way. It's quite dramatic.
So, I recognize that because when my husband was in hospital with irregular heartbeats at a quite dangerous level, I did the method you were talking about from the heart math, and you can believe it or not, but what happened when I practiced with him, he phoned in 10 minutes, said, well, I don't know what happened, but I'm back to normal. So I love just to experience, and it's measurable, how you can be from the heart with others. But let's go to the mighty heart, because after the business plan for peace, you started to quite from a source. Okay, now I have to do something else. I have to write another thing. So how did you come to the mighty heart? Because business plan for peace is already pretty profound. And then mighty heart opened. How come?
Oh, bless you. Well, it was before the pandemic struck. It was back in November or December 2019. And I suddenly had the premonition that something was coming towards the human race that was very profoundly dangerous, but also transformative. And I realized we had to assemble all the skills that our fellow peace builders use and bring them together in a package that people could learn, because we were going to face so many disasters, so many bereavements, so many difficulties of communication, such incredibly long hours people were going to have to work, all the trials and tribulations, even in our well-resourced countries, that this pandemic has brought. And so I sat down and wrote for 2 weeks, and all of a sudden the pandemic broke. And so I thought I better publish this. And we called it The Mighty Heart, How to Transform Conflict. And that got a tremendous reception very, very quickly. And we decided to turn it into an open course. A
10-week course, isn't it?
10 module course. And we put that out first last year. And then companies spotted it and asked us to deliver it to their employees. So we've now started on that course of delivering the online version very widely. And it's even being asked for now by mediators, coaches, and even the military, which is getting very interesting and which we're very excited about.
I think it's such an important skill. We all have a heart, no doubt. How to open it and become a mighty heart is just such a tool. Also, I can imagine having this for children at school as well, just to have it all. So it's really wonderful you brought this together. And I can say, for the ones who are listening, and watching on September 7th. The new open course will be open for just general participants. And if you want to be informed, just go to the Business Plan for Peace website or scillaelworthy.com website. You can find all about it, for companies. And I can say we're also looking for people who want to be trained in this material. So what you do, just go through the material yourself, and from there you can decide if you want to become a facilitator for the Mighty Heart material. And I'm privileged to be one of them. And I can't imagine my life without it, because it's transforming everything. It's not only transforming conflict, which you think, oh, that's outside in the other world. No, it's the whole loop of just looking at yourself, looking at the others, and looking to the world. And that's exactly what we do in this whole Peace Month and around the International Peace Day. So
Bianca,
perfect fit.
You're a walking, talking example, a shining example of how this works, how the skills work. And your organization of this summit is really incredible.
Scilla, I don't want to extend. We can talk for hours, we know that already, but I don't want to extend too long. So I will go to my final question. Mm-hmm. And it's, you will be speaking on the 21st of September, International Peace Day in the Netherlands, about the required inner work for peace building. So what do you want to bring that day, and why should people join you live? Because watching you is great, but interacting live, very limited spaces, only 50. So what do you want to bring, and why should people join with you live?
Oh, well, I do think there's something that happens in the energy in a room when people are really able to get a felt sense of the other person, and where there's a freedom to ask questions which are not necessarily logical. I mean, I really welcome the kind of debate and discussion that develops when it's live and when it's one-to-one. And that's why I'm looking forward so much to this summit of yours and to being there with you in the palace. That's going to be very exciting. So
yeah, and we're still we have the domain World Peace Summit, so we're still calling it a summit, but we're also in investigation if summit isn't too masculine, because it's not a peak. This is going on forever. So that's why building bridges, connecting world is more important to us than the word summit, because it's not one-time thing. We're not going to peak once.
And these bridges that you're building there will last into the far future, because this kind of knowledge is essential now for all humans to acquire these skills, because it's one practical way that we can all equip ourselves to deal with this pandemic, which isn't over by a long way. And we need to learn how to meet the challenges in a way which is not putting them on one side, ignoring them, solving them technologically. We need to develop the human skills of addressing and transforming conflict in our societies, and help people who are actually at war in other parts of the world to solve their conflicts too at the same time. So it's invaluable what this gathering will produce and promote.
I'm thrilled to make it happen. And I remember we were sitting in Amsterdam when you were there for a conference, and the night before we met, I couldn't sleep, and we were supposed to I was supposed to interview you. And I said, "Oh, just skip the whole interview. I have another idea. How about a business plan for peace conference?" And I remember your answer. This is a great link, but you have to organize it. But it never left me. And although it has a totally different form and shape now, the drive and the stand, the stand that I also took within the Mighty Heart course is the same. It's the same of connecting the people with their hearts, connecting the world with one another by listening. And that's what we share. And that's why I'm so thrilled to have you here. So is there a final golden nugget you want to share?
Well, just that doing this work has brought me into contact with people of your quality, of your caliber. It's been a joy, and it continues to be a joy, to work with such highly alert, intelligent, perceptive people as yourself. And not only great ideas do you have, but you make them happen. And I really love that about you, Nyanka. You are a thinker, an envisager, and a doer. Thank you very much.
We will continue. And if you're able to join live, we'll see you here in the Netherlands at a certain point. And for the ones who are just watching the interview series, I hope you are curious enough just to explore more about the Mighty Heart, the business plan for peace, or you can even watch Scilla's TED Talk while you're one of the 1.4 million people who watch that already. So explore, stay curious, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all one way or the other. Thank you for being here.